Come on. Welcome back to Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. I'm joined today on this Thursday afternoon by John Paul Mason. An absolute pleasure to see you, JP, and lots to talk about, even though we're in the midst of a pre-season break. There is a lot happening behind the scenes, I'm pretty sure, and some of that's filtering in to the mainstream consciousness. First thing I want to talk to you about is that jersey over your shoulder, because that has got a direct link into the biggest story in the world of Celtic in the last couple of weeks.
I thought there was no other week really I could probably get away with putting that up. At least it's got some relevance. There'll still be people being like, "Thought this was a Celtic state of mind, not a Real Sociedad state of mind." A returning prodigal son played there for was it a full season or was it half a season?
It was a full season. I mean, I think he played something along the lines of one game for Arsenal during that campaign. There's been lots of conversations and discussions around, obviously, the injuries, JP, which I've had a really close look at because people are saying that there's no way he's going to play as many as 30 games a season. My argument would be that he always has. There's been one occasion where he had a muscle off the bone injury for Scotland, which set him back massively. But if you add the international appearances into his club football, he has consistently played that level of football. So, yeah, a whole season in Spain. He was speaking about that, wasn't he? They're going over, speaking the language, a new experience, and he's telling us he's coming back as a better player and a better person as well.
I don't doubt it. It was interesting they chose St. Luke's as the launch site for his return. I don't know if that maybe had something to do with his musical. Because shock horror, Kieran Tierney likes music. I mean, dare I say it that Kieran Tierney's a music fan, big Ocean Colour Scene, Jerry Cinnamon. I'm damn sure he'll be at Oasis or one of the Oasis gigs. So maybe it was the music connection that led them to do the photo shoot. I saw the stained glass window straight away, and I was like, "That's St. Luke's."
Yeah.
I initially, from a distance, because it was not zoomed in, I thought it might have been St. Mary's in the Carlton. But I mean, it's same postcode, so they put them in there. But Real Sociedad, haven't been to the ground, haven't been to the game, but I have been to San Sebastian, and what a place that is. Just found myself there for one night on tour a few years ago, and it was incredible. It was a really, really amazing place. And actually, just before we came on, I just looked it up, and there was a few questions on Google, and it said, "Do Real Sociedad only sign Basque players?" Mm-hmm. And they did up until 1989. Who was the first player that they signed to break the? Do you know it?
I think I might. I might. Is it Aldo, John Aldridge?
Aye, it is.
And I'll tell you why. Right. I'll tell you why I know that. Right. Back in the day, beyond, this was before Channel 4 got into Italian football and all that, JP, to get a bit of intercontinental vibe about your kind of football knowledge, beyond the pages of the shooting match, who only kind of followed, let's say, English players or Welsh players. They followed Mark Hughes to Barcelona and Bayern Munich. They followed Lineker and all this. If you played abroad, there was coverage. But I don't know if you remember this, right? Trans World Sport. And and it was like Sunday morning, there was a football show, and they would show you from all these, and it was like really quite an eye-opener at that time when you think about how difficult it was to follow football outside your own little bubble. And I remember Aldridge going to Sociedad, and he was a goal-scoring machine over there, wasn't he?
I don't know. I mean, I was 9, so I don't remember the minutiae of what was on Trans World Sport. I do remember that they had Kabaddi. That sport, you ever heard of that?
Kabaddi? No, that's a new one on me.
That is from the very, very deep, dark recesses of my memory that I remember. Trans World Sport showed Kabaddi, and I couldn't even tell you what Kabaddi is. I know that it's maybe some sort of martial art, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
Somebody will know better than me, but that's just what I think of when I get Trans World Sport. And just the fact that they used to, this is like pre-Sky Sports, being able to switch on your telly and see sports from all around the world, and they would usually put it into like a kind of 1 hour, like, here's what happened in this sport this week, and it was really cool to see that as a wee guy. And then obviously you had the Italian football no long after it, maybe with Little House on the Prairie or the Waltons or Land of the Giants sandwiches in between. Sunday morning fair post St Mary's Chapel in Bathgate.
These are the memories, and sometimes it's the theme tunes that takes you back. But yeah, John Aldridge, I'm just double checking because he's the subject of this conversation. Kieran Tierney has led us to Aldo. What's the Celtic link? I hear you ask. Well, I did watch an interview with John Aldridge fairly recently. I might have mentioned it on here. And Celtic fan, growing up, Liverpool and Celtic, that was his two teams. And I loved that era of the Ireland team under Jack Charlton as well, always supporting them at the Euros and the World Cup and all this kind of stuff. And obviously that famous game in America where they're trying to get Aldridge on the park and there was some kind of administrative mix-up and he kicked off big time. In fact, he was replacing Tommy Coyne. He was coming on for Tommy Der Bomber Coyne, who... Honestly, man, it's one of the things I go back and I can remember that more vividly than I can remember what happened yesterday, JP. So John Aldridge, yeah, absolutely. He spent 2 seasons at Real Sociedad. And what about this for a record? Played 75 games, scored 40 goals. An absolute machine.
Decent return.
Was John Toshak maybe his manager?
I vaguely remember him being a manager there, but I couldn't tell you the time period or anything like that. I mean, that's, again, going... It's quite far back.
These are the deepest recesses.
I know.
I'm actually going to have a look at that. Right, so 1989, 1990, yeah, I would need to double check, but I'm pretty sure Toshak, there was a link there as well. We are, of course, talking about the main man, the returning Kieran Tierney. And like you say, we went down to that area of Glasgow, and we've used that a few times recently. Remember, we launched an Adidas kit with Mika Lustig down at the Barras. And of course, the links to St Mary's are there for all to see as well, JP. So I think it's brilliant that they managed to get down to St Luke's. I was recording This Is Acsom the day that video dropped, so it was probably already a week in the can. But you never know, I might have driven past them the week before and he was just bouncing about with Celtic sambas on, and I've not even noticed. I've been so focused on getting to the venue on time for the guests last week. So I'm delighted about Kieran Tierney. Yes, we acknowledge it's not a revelation that Kieran Tierney has had injury problems in his football career. Every time we talk about it, all we seem to be getting in the comments, JP, is, he's damaged goods, he's got prawn crackers for knees, all this kind of stuff. And when you look at it, you think, right, you know, if you were to look at the progress of a footballer up to that age, just turned 28. He's never played football since he turned 28. So, I mean, he's 28 years of age. And if you were to look at a lot of guys who, by the time they're 31, 33, and you compare how many games of football they've played up to the age of 28, it's no far off Kieran Tierney. I mean, I've already made the point, he's played more football at this stage than Greg Taylor had. At the same age, because he's won 50 caps for Scotland. So even when he wasn't making as many appearances for his club side, he was playing internationally. Albeit, we acknowledge he's had injuries. Is too much being made of the injury problems, JP?
I guess probably just from people with doubts, where people probably have doubts at the fact that we've managed to get him back at this point in his career. Because I think when Kieran Tierney left, it was definitely, we were of the thinking that if he was ever going to come back, and obviously that was the chat even at that point when he left, he'll be back one day, you know, but then you're thinking, will he be back at 31, 32, 33, that kind of age? And, you know, how effective would he be at that age? So I think the surprise is, maybe not a surprise, but probably surprised, because I think it was when we were first linked with him and it was actually like, oh, this is happening. People were like, how on earth are we getting Kieran Tierney? Because there's going to be competition for his signature from anyone that's paid attention to him down south, regardless of injuries. I think there was interest from other clubs. I don't know that for a fact, but I cannot believe for a second that there was nobody, you know, picking up the phone to Kieran Tierney's agent and being like, what's the script here? I just don't think that's the case. So the fact that we've got him back the right side of 30, with still a lot to offer, and the main thing for me is you're getting a Celtic fan back playing for the club, whether it's Anthony Ralston, Kieran Tierney, whoever. It's just, but then add into the fact that he's a really, really good player, a top player, an international, has up until very recently been playing for Arsenal, scored in his last game.
Champions League semi-final.
Was being used by the manager, maybe not to start every single game, but he was definitely being used off the bench, because I kept an eye on every single Arsenal game. I was looking to see, like, oh, Tierney's off the bench, he got 20 minutes here, he got a second half here, got 15 minutes here. Excuse me. So he was to be there or thereabouts in an Arsenal squad, and then to come in to Celtic. Much the same as Brendan Rodgers when he left. You're like, there's no way we're ever getting Brendan Rodgers back as a manager, and lo and behold, he's here. And also, I saw the picture they put out this morning of the Jota, Brendan Rodgers, and Kieran Tierney. All three of them, if you'd said at the time that they left that there would be a point in 2025 where Celtic would share a photo with all three of them in the photo, and they're all back, and we've got the guts of 50 million for two of them, and got one back on a free and one back for 8.5, and Brendan Rodgers comes back, signs a 3-year deal, and wins 4 trophies out of 6, including 2 league titles, and progresses as in Europe. That's pie in the sky stuff if you're looking at that a few years ago.
If we mention it, JP, we're told to stop being stupid. That kind of scenario did seem so far down the line, it just wasn't possible. But there's a lot of things you've said there that I totally agree with, and I think they're important. The first one, people might think, it's modern football, it doesn't matter. I think it does matter that Kieran Tierney has that mentality of having come in through Celtic, through the academy as a young boy, almost getting released, JP. People forget that. Almost being that guy on the periphery of a squad that wasn't really rated by the guys that were actually coaching him. And then Ronnie Deila and John Collins intervene in the journey, the path of Kieran Tierney. And he ends up in the first team squad where he stayed, basically, coming in as a 17-year-old. You've seen his physical transformation. It was almost like it was one of the ones, JP, where he goes away for a pre-season, comes back, and you think, wow, he has been training, the diet's all been sorted out. And Kieran Tierney came back and he was a bit of a monster, actually. That steeliness, the hardness that he has as well, sometimes is overlooked. And that's something that we have lacked in that area of the park for so long. In fact, we've lacked it in that area of the park since he left, JP. We absolutely have.
No, but again, I don't think you can really put a price on having somebody that is not only a good footballer, but will run through a brick wall for your team. I mean, how many times have you heard a certain other set of supporters going on about, we need proper players that know what it's all about and all that. That's what we're missing. We're getting one. We've just signed one. That's what. If anybody has forgotten what Kieran Tierney brought, absolutely scything tackles, no leaving nothing on the pitch. Just basically playing his heart out every single game. I remember that game at Pittodrie when he scored against Aberdeen, and he basically, I think he ran the length of the park to keep up with Dembele, gets it squared to him, smacks it in, and then sprints back the whole length of the pitch to celebrate with us. And it was it was amazing. Like, that is one of my favourite memories in football. Celtic, never mind Kieran Tierney. So that's the type of player you're getting back.
Yeah, that memory, being the capo of the Green Brigade with a loudspeaker was a memory and a half. And the time where he gets his face smashed against Aberdeen in the Scottish Cup final, nips up to get things sorted out with his jaw, comes back down, still wearing his full kit to go and get his medal. And then as he's got the trophy in his hand, you can still see that his face is numb because it's all dropped down on one side. Kieran Tierney was incredible. And in the modern day, as I say, I don't think enough emphasis is put on what you've said there. We've had players of quality coming in. I mean, I'm going to use the latest left back we brought in was Jeffrey Schlupp, a player of quality, of physicality, of pedigree. He's had success down in what people say is the strongest or the richest or the most attractive league in European football. He comes up to Celtic and he's not the same kind of beast. He doesn't have that same passion for Celtic. He's not showing it, JP. So there's so many players out there who don't have that extra margin. And I remember when we were talking to a number of ex-Celts for the Nearly Mocking documentary, we had the privilege of speaking to Pat Stanton up at Easter Road. And he spoke about the importance of having that edge, of having players within the squad, within a team, who were through and through Celtic. And he said when he walked in, he knew it existed, but he didn't know to what extent that existed. And some of the guys he was talking about were the likes of Johnny Doyle at that time. He said, that person would literally go to war for the football club. And I think a bit of that's been lost in the modern game. So the more we can bring back to the football club, who already know the standards, the expectations, what it means to be a Celtic player 24/7, all the better. Because again, I've seen a bit of a backlash in this, JP, talking about lazy recruitment, talking about, let's just get Brendan's Rolodex out. How lazy is it to bring back a player like Jota when we know what he can... And I'm looking at it thinking, right, ask yourself this. Does that player improve the starting 11? And if the answer is yeah, I don't have an issue with it. I really don't. It's not about an old boys act, because all that stuff we've just spoken about, the passion, the desire, knowing the expectations and the standards, JP, added to the fact that they're actually better than what we've got, for me, I don't have an issue with it. And that's what we're running with. And it was inspired by seeing that graphic that Celtic released this morning. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, we're getting the band back together on a Thursday. We're getting the band back together, JP. But I have seen some negativity around it. What do you make of all that?
I mean, there's always going to be negativity, isn't there? I mean, it doesn't matter what happens. There'll be somebody somewhere. There's people that clearly aren't happy with Brendan Rodgers in the comments on a weekly basis. I could name them because I've had a back and forth with a few people on that, which everyone's entitled to their opinion, but it seems absolutely insane to be slagging off Brendan Rodgers as the manager of our club. At this point in time, it's just I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I'm being a season ticket holder for combined 22 years all in, and I cannot subscribe to the fact that this is not a good place that we're in with the manager and this squad. But there obviously will be negativity, but I'm also thinking, and I just thought about this just now, you're getting back in Kieran Tierney, somebody that hasn't been winning trophies on the regular. He's been putting in a lot of effort and a lot of work, but he's not won the Premier League. He's not won a European trophy. And I think he won, Arsenal won the FA Cup or the League Cup. It was FA Cup.
Yeah.
So he's got the FA Cup to show for his efforts in terms of a medal. But he's coming back to Celtic and he'll be hungry to be lifting trophies again, because that's ultimately what you want to do as a player, isn't it? It's all very well. I'm sure he's the actual pulling on the jersey and everything else. That'll feel amazing, and training will feel amazing, and even stepping out onto the pitch will feel amazing. But he's a professional footballer, and what they do at the end of the day is play to win. And he will want to win for Celtic, and that is just a massive, massive advantage for us. And I don't see this as a James McCarthy situation where we're giving a 5-year deal to somebody and we've got absolutely no idea of how many games they're going to play. I'm pretty certain Kieran Tierney will play, injuries permitting. I mean, he could be injured, but he could pick up an injury like Jota did at Tannadice. Does that mean Jota's an injury-prone player? No, it just was unfortunate. So if Kieran Tierney does pick up an injury, then we'll have to deal with that. But I don't think the Kieran Tierney that's arriving at Celtic right now is someone that we should be concerned about in terms of his injuries. I don't feel that.
Well, we know, JP, that we live in a very a world whereby every negative thought has to be put on some kind of platform. So back in the day, you might have disliked something, but you didn't have to broadcast it. Now everybody has the power to do that, and there's nothing we can do about that. But what we can do at Acsom is we can manage our own comments field, if you like. We can manage our own social media, and what we've decided over a period of time, and a lot of this is down to the abuse that people have been getting and all this kind of stuff, both folk at the football club like Brendan Rodgers, but also our own contributors, that we just don't tolerate it. I love people disagreeing. That's brilliant. Absolutely disagree. Let's have a discussion about it. Let's have a debate. But we don't fall out. We don't trade insults. We don't, that for me, you can look at it within your own little tribe and say, well, it's unacceptable. And that's why certain people within the comment section have unfortunately had to be banned. And I got criticised for that. And the criticism was, why are you banning a Celtic fan when Rangers fans come on and troll this place? Well, anytime somebody comes in who is coming in just to try and bam up Celtic supporters, they do get banned. They absolutely do get banned. Some of them then go away and set up a second burner account. They've got far too much time on their hands, if you ask me, JP. So it's not about an us and them. If somebody's coming on 20 or 30 times a day and making a comment which is negative towards Acsom, negative towards contributors, negative towards Celtic, and that's all they're bringing to the table, they don't have to be there. This is the thing. We don't really have to put up with that, JP, regardless of whether or not they're a Celtic fan, because a lot of it is just, it's an insult. It puts a really bad turn on just about everything that happens. Kieran Tierney said, oh, but he's always injured. And then you show some facts about that. You go to the age of 28 and say, right, how many games of football did this player play by the age of 28? Was Kyogo classed as an injury-prone player because he spent a lot of time injured during his time at Celtic? Is CCV, is he a guy you'd get rid of because of his... No, these footballers have missed a lot of games of football, JP. But Brendan Rodgers has already tackled this, and the big discussion really is, who is the understudy? Who's the second choice? Who, and I'm not going to call it a job share, but who is going to play the other 20 to 25 games for Celtic next season?
Well, the fact is that plan and that discussion has been put in place, isn't it? Because it's not as if we're not aware that Kieran Tierney probably played too many games for Celtic when he was here the first time round. Mm-hmm. And Brendan Rodgers was his manager for the majority of that time. So the fact is that we're going to be bringing somebody else of a similar, definitely not of a similar level, but someone else of quality to basically play in his position as well, so that he's not being asked to play Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday. So, that you can't do that to somebody, and then they get injured from being burnt out, and then everyone goes, "Oh, well, I told you so." It's like, well, that's because we've not managed them right. Brendan Rodgers is a better manager than he was in 2016. Kieran Tierney is a better player than he was in 2016. And in Celtic, you would like to think, are in a better place as a club than they were in 2016. And that's obviously from the success, but also having experienced defeat in 2021, and what that looks like. The modern age has seen what that looks like, and it's a pretty ugly sight. I wouldn't necessarily say the Aberdeen victory in the Scottish Cup final was an ugly sight, but it was a timely reminder that we can't win everything. And ultimately, potentially in the long run, it could be good for some of the players that are going to continue to play for Celtic, because it gives you something to fight for. You don't just get trophies handed to you on a plate, despite what some might say. We didn't get the 9 in a row trophy handed to us. We won it based on the circumstances. Like that still irks me when people say that. It's like
they try and say there's a tainted element of the second 9 in a row that we won, despite the tainted nature of everything they won around about that time, JP. And there must be some kind of memo or a mailing list, or maybe it's a forum, because instantly they all start singing for the same song sheet. They use the same language. They've got the same explanation as to why they're the same club, why they're the most successful club in the world, and then why your 9 in a row was tainted. It's absolute nonsense. And by the way, going back to one of the points you made about the staunch Avengers saying, yeah, we need good Rangers men. I think what they're getting at is that scene in the dressing room from the 1980s or the early 90s with Souness and the rest of them celebrating,
100%.
Singing the Billy Boys, and there's a picture of the Queen on the wall, and the gaffer wears brown brogues, and they drink from the loving cup, and all this, you know what I mean? The abseil from the club deck. I think, when I think about it from a Celtic perspective in the modern age, I'm thinking about winners, success, every single season, every single game. Go and win the game. Kieran Tierney was brought up in that mould, as was Callum McGregor, as was Tony Ralston and James Forrest. That's what we're talking about. That's what we've talked about a culture. We're not talking about the hate fest kind of culture, because when they say they want right Rangers men, they're talking John Bryn. They're not talking, Kieran Tierney, who's been, brought up with success and a level and a standard that you've got to meet every single day.
Well, but Kieran Tierney, if you think of what age he is, he's 28. He was born in 97, I guess. And it's terrifying to think, but like his whole life has just been seeing Celtic win. And he's then got the opportunity to continue that winning sort of habit, and he's done it. He's done it in terms of winning trebles, back-to-back trebles, playing in the Champions League, and he's scoring against Man City. I know it took a nick, but that's still his goal, and I still celebrated it like it was his goal. So he's picked up the baton from guys that he looked up to. Like he always says, he loved Bobo Baldi, and it would have been like guys like obviously Sutton and Bellamy, and like when he's like, I don't know, 10, 11, that's the team he's watching, the Gordon Strachan team that's going into the Champions League, last 16 twice in a row.
Nakamura,
exactly. Like watching as a wee guy, Celtic beat Man United and beat AC Milan and all those sort of things. So that's his sort of that's his goal. His goal was to be that guy, and he's been that guy, and he's getting to do it again. And I can only imagine how buzzing he is to be back. The experience he's had down south is one thing, but he's getting to play for the club that he loves again, whilst he's still in a decent state. It's not. Andy Robertson keeps mentioning, oh God, I'd love to play for Celtic. I see the ground full, and I'd love to play. Andy that's slipping away from Andy Robertson now, I would suggest. I don't think that's a realistic thing anymore, because are we really going to go out and sign Andy Robertson, age 32, 33, pay him top dollar? I'm not so sure. I think it's maybe gone for him, and he'll be gutted about that, because when your career's over. You don't get that opportunity. So maybe the Kieran Tierney thing would make other people think twice. I mean, Tierney's going to come back and be in that dressing room soon, and everyone's going to be like, "What's it like? What's the Premier League like?" And he can tell them the good and the bad, and his chat to them could mean the difference between guys leaving or staying, because the good that he tells them about down there might be like enough for X, Y, and Z player to be like, all right, well, that's where I want to go. I want to do that. I want to experience that. But then the bad that he tells them could be like, actually, I don't really like the sound of that. London sounds rubbish. I don't really want to live there. I'd rather stay here and play with you. So yeah.
See that point you make there, like a footballer that comes through and ends up at Celtic at a certain age. Many of them, and I'm not the type of person that's blind to this. Most of the footballers of a certain age want to go to a bigger league, and a big part of that is because of the money, and that's fine. And Kieran Tierney went away. He probably earned generational wealth, multi-generational wealth, and now he's back at Celtic, living the dream again. But he's come back to Celtic in a position, I think, that Champions League is now on the table in terms of a discussion point. Previously, I thought we were just playing at the Champions League when Tierney was here before. I mean, I look back at the Brendan Rodgers era first time round, and we didn't. I don't even know if we took it seriously. We certainly didn't put a dent in any hopes of Champions League progression. And again, this is another thing. You look at last season, people will say the only reason you did it is because you got a good draw, etc. Look, it's a combination of reasons why we managed to get to that knockout playoff round against Bayern Munich. But we got there. And because you got there, JP, nothing but that stage is going to be good enough if you want to progress. And the type of player that you bring in has to improve the starting 11. Kieran Tierney undoubtedly does that on so many different levels. And I'm bringing this up. I'd need to check this, Barry. I have been looking at a lot of the Kieran Tierney injuries, the layoffs, the games missed, comparing him, for example, to other players who have gone on to become Hall of Famers. Kieran Tierney played more games at the age of 28 than the guy that is going to be tearing to pieces next season when he does an overlap. Barry Quinn, KT was only unavailable once through injury in his last year at Arsenal. Once. He's done the world's longest pre-season and will be ripped and primed for his Celtic return. Barry, I'm looking forward to it. I really am. And we weren't at the Kieran Tierney unveiling, but yesterday, in fact, earlier on today, Chris McElwain went up to Celtic Park to speak to Shay Given and Stephen McManus, who were there to promote the upcoming friendly game against Newcastle United. Now, if we go back to January, I'm pretty sure Newcastle and West Ham and maybe even Everton were mentioned in relation to being interested in taking Kieran Tierney. So you're right, JP. It's not like, you know what, I'm just not at the standard anymore. I'm going to go back to Celtic and live out the last few years of my career. He could have stayed in there quite easily.
Oh, aye, and earned way more than he could earn at Celtic. And obviously, when I was saying that about him, saying to the players, Kieran Tierney can point to a very, very healthy bank account as one reason why some of those players would want to go. And that might be the thing that drives them. But I don't know Kieran Tierney. I've met him once, and twice actually, and I don't. He doesn't strike me as the type of person that is all about money. You know, he cuts about in the same clobber that he wore 8-9 years ago, and I don't see him driving around in a Ferrari or anything like that. Maybe he has a Ferrari. I certainly haven't seen any pictures of him in it in the press or anything like that. He just seems like a normal guy. The money to him has probably just been a kind of happy byproduct of him being a really good footballer, and you're not going to turn down a stupid salary from a club like Arsenal, and the fact that he's going to come back to Celtic is for him is just I would imagine it's a dream situation for him to come back at this point, and he'll be looking at that Champions League and the new format of the Champions League, which I am genuinely excited about. I know that there's that kind of argument over would we rather be in the Europa League and have a swinging chance of getting somewhere, as other clubs have proven from our league, who we've dismantled on a regular basis. But I think the Champions League format and the way it is now will be really exciting for him, because he'll be looking at it the same way that we do as fans and being like, oh, we've got a chance here. We've got a chance to potentially get out of this group, go somewhere and play different teams as well. The fact that there's so many more games now, and it's not all you play the same team home and away twice, that factor taken out of it is huge as well, because I mean, guaranteed if you're going to get hammered off a team away like we did in PSG, they're going to hammer you at Celtic Park as well. It's not as if you're going to go. I mean, the only thing is, I think if we played Borussia Dortmund off the back of that 7-1 last season, I don't think they would have hammered us at Celtic Park. I think.
I agree. I agree with you.
Fair play to PSG. They had all the superstars in the world and everything else at that time. They had, God only knows what their wage bill must have been at that time when they were paying Cavani, Neymar, Messi. I can only imagine, and that's why I never really wanted them to do well. I just didn't like this idea of them being this kind of Galacticos wannabe Real Madrid type club. And when you see the team that they've put together that won the Champions League this season, you kind of go, okay, they've still spent a bit of money, but it's not like absolute confetti. They've kind of spent smart and bought young and built a good team. And then you see what their supporters stand for as well, and you're like, okay, I take a bit of a different view to PSG now than I did maybe 6-7 years ago. But the point is that there is a chance there, and Tierney will have seen the way that Celtic, have watched all those games last season, and have been like, God, I really want to be a part of that, next season. And as much as the Europa League is an attractive prospect to potentially go on a run again and maybe dare to dream to get to a final or whatever, the way that the Champions League is stacked now is I want to get through these qualifiers and get in there and see who we get. Like, I'm not thinking, oh, well, it'll be all right if we drop out and we'll go into Europa League. I'm not thinking like that at all. I'm thinking, let's get through these qualifiers and then see what happens and see and test ourselves again at that highest level and keep Brendan Rodgers interested, keep players interested that maybe teetering on, well, it might depend on whether we get Champions League, whether or not they stay, because they might want to increase their value, and their value will increase if they're in the Champions League. That's a given, isn't it? Yeah. The
thing with the Arsenal versus Celtic, when you look at the Champions League kind of levels, and there's a team that Kieran Tierney was with last season who got to the semi-final of the Champions League, and he was very much involved, but he wasn't their first pick. and then you're looking at Celtic. Now, I don't know, obviously, the conversations that have been had, but you would expect the Champions League ambitions would be part of that discussion, JP. I'm moving from a club here who's gone, right through to the semi-finals of the Champions League. What's your aspirations next season? Now, the aspirations might be, like I said at the top of the show, we want to get to a knockout. We want to get to a knockout in the Champions League. We did it this season. We want to do it again next season. And Kieran Tierney might look at that and say, right, that's quite a bit away from where Arsenal got. But I wasn't a first-team pick. I wasn't a first pick for Arsenal. I will be one of the main men at Celtic. So you take a wee bit of a regression in terms of progress as a team. But as a player, you're involved. You're one of the first names on that team sheet every single game that we
100%.
play in Europe. So that's a bit of balance, but I can understand why he would say, you know what, maybe we're not going to get to, and no maybes about it, we're not going to get to the semi-finals, but I'm going to be involved and I'm going to be part of this group of players who's hopefully going to continue with this progress.
And it's playing for the club that he loves and supports and has so much experience from previously. But I mean, he's got experience of being on the end of a hiding, hasn't he? I mean, I'm pretty sure he would have been there that night. Is the 7-1 game? I can't remember off the top of my head, but I can't see how Kieran Tierney wasn't playing in any of those games where we got
Barca and PSG were the two
round,
wasn't it?
Yeah, those were. There was a chasm between us and them. I mean, it would be interesting to play Barcelona next season and test a 2025-26 Celtic against a 2025-26 Barcelona. I mean, that guy Yamal, looks serious talent, and I'm pretty sure he could have a lot of fun against us, and I wouldn't want to see that. But I think that we don't seem as far away, despite the Borussia Dortmund game last season. I don't think we seem as far away from the top clubs as the Bayern Munich game is a case in point. Bayern Munich beat us 3-0 in the Allianz the last time we played them, and it was 3-0. It could have been anything they wanted. They also beat us 2-1 at home, if I'm right in thinking. That was when McGregor scored. Yeah, so it was the same exact score at Celtic Park, but we were beaten handily away. I mean, we were beating them with seconds to go in that game, which is unheard of. I mean, it was unheard of for us anyway. I mean, I don't recall ever feeling like that the being on edge as that game was playing out. I was like, are we actually going to do this?
We could do it. Yeah, there was a belief. There was a belief, JP. I'm going to bring something up, and it actually involves Idah. So remind me, I need to bring this up. It is a point in relation to the tightness of that game, the missing of an edge in the Scottish Cup final. And I'm going to use that Idah as an example. But before I do that, there's a couple of really good comments I want to bring in. Kieran Tierney did play in the 7-1 game against PSG away, by the way. The Celtic lineup was Craig Gordon in goals, still playing, Mika Lustig, Simunovic and Boyata. We played a back three that night. The midfield was swamped. We had Jamesy Forrest on the right, Kieran Tierney on the left, McGregor, Brown and Cham in the middle. We had Tommy Rogic playing as a number 10 and Moussa Dembele playing up top. Dembele opened the scoring, rattled their cage. I always remember that after seconds, the first minute of the game.
It was into the Celtic end. It was into the goals that we were behind.
And Dembele scores. And you're thinking, wow, could we actually do this? The answer was no.
We hadn't conceded a goal that season until that point.
I know, but we just annoyed them. And they took it out on us. So, yeah, he certainly did play. Some of the good comments coming in. Mo Sislak, thanks for getting involved. I think what you mean here is Katie was years ago. We can't rely on him being the same. I think we've got to look at his progression as a player. We certainly can't rely on him in terms of playing 55 games or 50 games a season, JP. I think that would be ridiculous to expect that. I'm certainly not expecting that. And that's why there's such an importance and a focus on who else is coming in. And I've seen some good names. I've seen some
Josh
names. I thought, in terms of just like a perfect match, Josh Doig, absolutely. I mean, look, I love the romanticism of everybody in the team being a proper, like, Celtic man with something to prove. Andy Robertson's got something to prove. It's probably the only thing he's got to prove in his football career, JP, because we didn't believe in him when he was a kid. And that fired him, I think. And according to the guys that worked with him in the early days, that fired him to become the player that he became. Thrown in the scrap heap, away and got a job in Marks and Spencer's and signed for Queen's Park, and then built it up from basically the bottom and built it up to become a European. Absolutely brilliant. Fantastic story. And a role model for young kids who are getting freed every single season, by the way, that this is what can happen if you believe in yourself. But the one thing that he didn't do is he didn't make it at Celtic. That was the thing where he's been, and yeah, we got it wrong. Of course we did. Look at what he's done. But Josh Doig, actually, if you were to put the two of them side by side, would be, I think, more of a sensible option, JP.
I mean, I certainly don't want or expect everybody to be Celtic fans in the team, but like it'd be a Scottish player as well, which I think we're losing one in Greg Taylor in that exact same position, and we would be hopefully gaining one if we were to go and get Josh Doig if he wanted to come. And then you look at the keeper situation as well. We've let Scott Bain go, but we're bringing Ross Doohan back, who's obviously rated. He was in the international squad recently, and he's a younger guy, so he's got time on his side to potentially become a number one at some point. Who knows? The Celtic goalkeeper situation is a bit of a kind of, I don't know, it's a bit of a strange one. Like, I cannot complain at all about Joe Hart and Kasper Schmeichel in the last few seasons, because both of them have come in and done exactly what we sat here and spoke about them hoping that they were going to do. Like we said when Kasper Schmeichel came in last season, there was people commenting saying, "Oh, he's past it. He's this, he's that. Why are we signing another one of Brendan Rodgers' ex-players and everything else? And he'll cost us in Europe." He didn't cost us in Europe. He saved us in Europe quite a few times. He pulled off some pretty big saves. If you think about the saves in the Young Boys game, there was a couple. Before we got the goal near the end, that was pretty nervy in that game, and he kept his head and kept us in that at the highest level that we play. That is that whether it was Young Boys, whether it was Real Madrid, it didn't really matter. That game we had to win to get into the next round, and we did it as a result of the team, but Kasper Schmeichel being one of them. But I mean the Scottish quota is massive, and Brendan Rodgers touches upon it all the time about how he likes to have a Scottish core. And I mean, if we're looking to sign a midfielder, the Lennon Miller thing seems to keep growing and growing and growing to the point that it's now 10 million that's been spoken about with regards to him. I mean, I find it astonishing that you could be asking for 10 million for a player, based on what he's done. Like, I mean, do you agree? Do you think 10 million is a bit much considering?
You know what, JP, right? I know exactly what you're saying there. I think that this is the sweet spot for a team like Motherwell. And it's all down for me, right? The guy's obviously got pedigree, he's got ability, and he's got massive potential. But I think a massive part of this is down to courting the Italian teams and using McTominay success and Gilmour success, Ferguson. I think the moment is right for a team just to say, well, we've got the next guy coming along. And you look at the success of the A3 that I've just mentioned. This boy's the next one in line. I think the timing of that, at no other point would we have been talking about £10 million for Lennon Miller. And I'm not saying he won't become a £10 million player, because I think he's got bags of potential.
Aye, that's the thing. Like, you maybe think it would be like 6, 7, and then loads of clauses inserted to make sure Motherwell maybe get to 10 or 12 or whatever.
By the way, fair play. See if Motherwell do get 10 million for a player. Absolutely tremendous. For Scottish football, for Motherwell. I mean, they didn't Turnbull pay for a new pitch and all that at Fir Park. The Turnbull fee that Celtic paid Motherwell, I mean, obviously some of that would have filtered their way into the playing side of things, but the infrastructure was all boosted by David Turnbull, a player who cost them nothing. It was all about development, and then £3.5 million later, and they reinvest it. Imagine a club like Motherwell getting 10 million quid.
No, no. If that is what his figure is, and that's it, and there's no coming down from that, then obviously you've got to be happy for Motherwell if they did manage to get 10 million. But I'd like to know, when the prospective buyer goes in, when they go, right, well, this is why we're valuing him at 10 million, and then lay out the reasons why. Like, because you've got no trophies to show for his success. So that's one big ticket off the table straight away. Mm-hmm. He's not played European football. He's only just come into the international setup.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's not, you're not.
But this leads me on to my next point, right? These are just mad figures. These are just figures. Is anybody worth £10 million in any walk of life when it comes to sport? I mean, the answer is probably no, unless you can have a marketing and commercial backup to say that we'll sell this amount of jerseys and all the rest of it. The answer probably is no. But if they're going to pay Nick £10 million, you compare that £10 million to the two transfer fees that have been the point of discussion all season that Celtic shelled out last summer. All we're hearing is Adam Idah's not worth this and Engels isn't worth that. But what you've just said there is spot on, right? Lennon Miller conceivably could go for that figure this summer, JP, right? Conceivably. And he's not played Champions League football. And he's just played one game for Scotland. And albeit he's younger, not a great deal younger than Engels, but he's younger than Andy Engels. Yet all I hear is Engels isn't worth £11 million. By this point in Engels' career, he's going over. He played from 19 to 20 in the Bundesliga for a whole season. Not a bit part player, picked every single week. Every week. And that was on the back of that Celtic shelled at 11. Was he worth 11? Probably not. He was probably worth 8 or 7 or 7.5. But when two clubs are going head-to-head to sign a player, and it gets to the point where we've sold our big asset in Matt O'Reilly, we need to bring in a midfielder, not a direct replacement, then obviously you don't mind spending £2 or £3 million over the odds.
Aye, but the thing is with Matt O'Reilly, like, if the same conversation's been had between Celtic and Brighton, Celtic can go, here's all what Matt O'Reilly's done. Mm-hmm. He's won these titles. He's won a treble. He's won man of the match in the Champions League game. He's played at Champions League level. He's a Danish cap. Great. He's this age. You've seen his stats for this season, his goals and his assists. How could you not be talking if you're selling him to a Premier League club? How could you? If we'd sold Matt O'Reilly for 10, 15 million pounds, I think people would have been like, we've been absolutely robbed. Completely robbed.
Yeah,
like, because you've watched the guy play week in, week out. Now, Motherwell fans could maybe say the same thing about Lennon Miller, but I've watched him play week in, week out. He's levels above our club and levels above this league, and will play. I'll put my season ticket on it. He will play at this level and become a 20, 25, 30 million pound player. That's a big thing to state at this point. But I knew watching Matt O'Reilly, this guy's got it. He's 100% got it.
And we've set that bar, haven't we?
There's a Belgian player that they currently think is worth 25 million based on 5 goals and 10 assists.
And no trophies.
And a half decent second half of the season and a goal against us.
Yep.
Or 2 goals against us or whatever. I mean, to be asking for 25 million for him is absolutely mental. Like I'm not just saying that from bias. There's no way. If they get 25 million for him, I will be astonished that if someone pays 25 million for him based on what he's done, because ultimately you're basing it on what the player has done. I know there's a potential element to it and all that as well, and you're buying potential, and I get that. But he's 24. He's 2 years older than Matt O'Reilly. Matt O'Reilly's 22.
Mm-hmm. I know. And you know that bar that we're talking about, the bar that we set the Celtic when we sell players like Kieran Tierney and Jota for £25 million. So when you're selling your star asset, that's where we're starting. If you want a discussion, we're starting there. And obviously all the add-ons onto Matt O'Reilly's deal probably makes it a £30 million deal over the piece. Right, so that's fine. But Motherwell, their kind of bar isn't what they've sold players for in the past. Their bar is, look what all these Scots are doing in Italy. That's I think what their argument is. So on one side, you've got all the data with regards to their passes and their pack passes, JP, and their aerial duels and all that stuff, which is very important. But you've also got that raw data, like what has he done since he came to Celtic, in the case of Idah and Engels, and in the case of Matt O'Reilly that you've already explained. What has he done that's taken him from that point to that point? Well, Engels and Idah, right, have now got a Champions League campaign under their belts. In that Champions League campaign, Engels won Man of the Match awards and got assists. Idah scored goals. In that campaign, both players, Idah already was an international cap. Both players are international caps. Engels wasn't when he came to Celtic. So all of these things mean that if he was worth £11 million 12 months ago, why do you think for a moment that he's regressed? The actual data will be the same as it was when we signed him in terms of all the data criteria. So I think it's an interesting discussion point, but people are always going to say they're not worth this, they're not worth that. And there is a discussion point at the moment in the chat about Idah. So it's leading us to Adam Idah.
Before we speak about that, I just need to correct myself. Matt O'Reilly's 24, but he was 23 when we sold him. So
yeah, and obviously Engels is 21. He's 21. He's a Belgian international. He's won 2 trophies in his first season.
I wouldn't say that based on what Engels has done for us this season that he's suddenly worth 25 million. Absolutely no way. I would say right now, based on that, what he's done, I'd say we'd be at least getting our money back for him, and then maybe a bit more, maybe 15. And I think that's fair to say. That's a sensible. I would consider that sensible. If I heard somebody else saying that, that's what I would think. So I don't get this.
It's a strange one, JP, because I'm of the view that we've done a bit of legwork with Arnie Engels. There's the potential that he'll have a breakout season, which I don't think he's had yet at Celtic. If someone was to come in with a £15 million bid, let's just say, because apparently Atalanta were interested in him, right? Could you go to the Bundesliga and buy another 20-year-old for £15 million? That's the question I would ask. Would you be able to buy a 21-year-old Belgian international midfield player, right, with his data and with his stats for £15 million? And the answer is probably no. So I can understand both sides of the argument, right? Sell him because, it's not worked out. Really? We just won the double. And we won it comfortably. We won the league at a canter. Let's be honest, JP, 17 points. We talk about a point swing. When Martin O'Neill came in, it was 21 points. 21-point swing. And we felt miles away for Rangers the season that Martin O'Neill came in. So when we're talking, and Postecoglou, the point swing there, was that 21 as well? It was there or thereabouts, 19. It was around about that figure. We just won the league by 17 points. Miles ahead of the opposition, right? Miles ahead. So we've had a great season, and he was integral to that because he played 50 games of football for Celtic. Joe Hamilton, I want to talk about Idah. There's a lot of stuff, and I'm guessing it's around a suggestion that maybe there's been a bid or someone's interested that I've not seen yet. Joe says Big Adam is going nowhere. Barry O'Sullivan says that he can't leave for any less than £7 million. We've also got wouldn't let offload Idah for £3.5 million, no chance, Multi Joe. So I don't know what that is in relation to. But what I would say is this, right? See last season, JP, when we bring in a loan player, right, who we end up spending £8.5 million, rising to 9.5 potentially, on Adam Idah. Forget the fee for a moment, right? We bring in a loan player, and the impact he had in that 6 months last season, I'm talking about Brendan's first season, right, massively contributed to us winning a double. So you're looking at the league games that he absolutely was pivotal, and you're looking at the Hibs game where he scores 2 penalties, and we couldn't score penalties for love nor money at that point. That's all Engels does. I'd love to see you trying to score a penalty in front of 60,000 people, right? But anyway, Idah comes in. He's got big performances against Hibs at Easter Road, against Motherwell at Fir Park. He scores what looks to be the winner against Rangers at Ibrox, but it becomes a 3-3 draw. And he scores the winning goal in the final of the Scottish Cup. So there's a player that we brought in. And by the way, even if we didn't follow through and bring him in permanently, he's made a massive impact in the last 6 months of that season, JP. My frustration is talking about Bayern Munich and whether or not that striker's worth £8.5-9 million. If we had brought in a replacement for Kyogo, a replacement, I'm not saying permanently, it could have been a loan deal, and they had the same impact as Adam Idah had the previous season, we might have had enough against Bayern Munich. Listen, I'm not saying Adam, because I know Adam Idah played the game. I'm talking about an additional striker that had the impact of Adam Idah the previous season. These margins are fine. What about the Scottish Cup final? Somebody on the bench you can call upon to come on and make a difference. We didn't really have that up top. So when you're talking about what went wrong in January, that's what, for me, was the reason. That was the first issue of what then came in the Bayern Munich game and in the Aberdeen game. So when people are saying he's not worth £8.5 million, see when he scored that goal against Rangers, and you were asked after that game when we clinched the double, would you sign him for 8.5? Most of us would have said aye. We said it at the time, JP. And then since then, if you want to talk about values of footballers, he's now scored 3 goals in the Champions League. We're not giving him the young boys goal, but he obviously played a big part in that as well. He's now got a Champions League campaign under his belt. He's playing and scoring for Ireland. He's won another 2 trophies. Why would his value depreciate so much? It doesn't work like that, JP.
Not when you've scored in the top European competition. I would just completely devaluing competitions now and just throwing figures on people just because you can. I'm not saying that Raskin is not a good player, by the way. He clearly is. He's in the Belgian setup. You don't get in that unless you're half decent. But you shouldn't just be getting £25 million transfer fees put on you just because of that. You've not won anything. Like, he's not won like that. The whole point in competition is you surely pay more for the people that have proved that they can do the business for you over the course of a season and contribute to success, which is trophies. So, God forbid, if Rangers were to win the league and cup next season and Raskin scores 15 to 20 goals and has 10 to 15 assists or whatever, then aye, fill your boots with your and plays in the Champions League. Fill your boots with your 25 and is in the Belgian team. Fill your boots with your £25 million chat. But you can't then say the same thing, the reverse for Adam Idah. There's no way. If Adam Idah was to leave Celtic tomorrow for £3.5 million, I'd be asking serious questions of Celtic as a club and what they're doing, because why would you accept that? You're selling a Champions League striker, guys, an international and Champions League striker. He starts for Ireland and has scored for us in the Champions League. Scored a very, I mean, you're not crediting him with it, but scored a pretty crucial goal/own goal, whatever you want to call it. That goal doesn't happen without him. And
that's a great point. That's a great point. Kyogo, as much as I loved him, JP, he's not got that physicality that Idah had to force the ball, to force that move that night. It doesn't happen unless he does it on the park.
I'm so gutted for him that it wasn't a direct goal, because
I know
the fact that it was only that it came off him type thing is not really being celebrated. Do you think your man that scored the goal and it wasn't even really a goal? Do you think your man was it Alphonso Davies or was it Kingsley Coman? I can't remember. I've tried to block it out of my mind. I've never watched it back. The Bayern Munich game. Who scored the goal, or who is credited for the Bayern Munich goal, the equaliser at the end? Because it was definitely somebody that had come on as a sub, and it was either Kingsley Coman or Alphonso Davies, and obviously they're just there in that place. But I mean, they'll be celebrated for that goal because it got them into the next round. I mean, obviously they didn't go anywhere.
Davies, it was credited to Alphonso
Davies, right? Yeah. Okay, so you could hardly class that as being an amazing goal, and it barely needed to do anything, but that goal got them into the next round of the Champions League. His goal got us into the next round of the Champions League, meaning that we didn't need to go to Aston Villa and win, which was a tall order, but he still went down there and scored 2 goals down there anyway to stop us getting a hiding. So there's still obviously people going to be negative about Adam Idah, and I don't think you or I or anybody can stop that. That's just people set in their ways. And the only thing I hope, particularly for next season, is that Idah has an absolutely ridiculous season, like a totally ridiculous season, whereby he's like maybe even 30 goals, 30 to 40 goals, scores a winner in a game against Rangers, scores 1-0 at Ibrox, Idah the scorer. Mm-hmm. At what point do you then take notice of the guy that's right in front of you that is you want as a striker playing for your club? See, it'll be his second season next season. I'm not counting the 6 months loan spell. You're allowing the guy to have a season to bed in, as we did with Henrik Larsson. Henrik Larsson became I'm not saying, by the way, that Idah's going to become Henrik Larsson. Absolutely no way. But you've got to allow a player to develop. Like, it's just the modern world. Everything's got to be now. It's like
instant gratification, JP. Yeah. But I mean, he scored 20 goals last season, Adam Idah. 20 goals a ton, not the first choice goal scorer for
for the first half of the season.
For 6 months.
Or really the second half, because Idah comes in and does what he does.
That's right. So in terms of the minutes and the goals, as I say though, we could sit here and bang the drum for Adam Idah, and it's going to be very difficult for people who've already made their minds up to be changed and swayed with their opinions on Idah. Same with Engels. People are going to say that he's not worth 11 until we sell him for more than £11 million. On your point of Rascan, 10 to 15 million pound, Rangers will bite their hands off. Simple as that. I mean, these figures, they've done it. The media plays into it. We've heard it with Morelos, we've heard it with Kent, we've heard it with Butland, 25, 30 million. Absolute gibberish. Celtic go out and do the business, JP. We sell players for that amount of money. We've done it 3 times now. We've done it with Tierney, we've done it with Jota, and we've done it with Matt O'Reilly. And we've sold players for £10 million on a number of occasions as well. So it's all right just pulling a figure out of thin air, like you said there, based on nothing, and then running with it. It's just propaganda to try and drum up. You know, the agents are involved in doing it, the club are involved in doing it, and so are the journalists that run the story. But based on what? Based on what? There's no real evidence to suggest that they could demand that kind of fee. Maestro, Andy Lee, when we signed Joe Miller, he was outstanding, yes, and he was wanted at the time by Tottenham, Liverpool and Manchester United, and he signed for Celtic on less money than he was getting at Aberdeen. Stevie Boy, you know, with every Weetabix or biscuit hips, they would love to have a player of Tierney's calibre. We see through their lies and rage. It is rage. And Big Red gives a big shout out to Archie McPherson, who, when commentating on Eurosport, without Google, it's got to be pointed out, absolutely, aye. How did he know how to pronounce the names more than anything else? And Francis Logan, we've also got, why not try for Doak if we're going to go for ex-players? Because it would cost £25 million, because that's what they're talking about. Everton are interested at £25 million for Ben Doak as well. Sleekit is talking to Barry O'Sullivan, stop smoking the wacky backy. We ain't getting £7 million, £5 million, take it or leave it. I'm biting your hand off for 4+. And they're talking about Adam Idah here. There's no way he's not leaving at £4 million. No way.
Well, if Brendan Rodgers wants to keep him, he'll be at the club, right? That's as simple as that, surely. Or you'd like to think that that's the case. I really don't want us to go down that road again. But why would you not give him the opportunity to play another season? And then if he wants to go for whatever reason, I don't know why he would, but if he wants to go, have another like really strong season, and then we're not talking about less than what we paid for. We're talking about getting more.
Look at his age profile. Seriously, JP. I mean, you look at a striker like Giakoumakis and you think to yourself, you know, we didn't sell him for 10 million quid and all the rest of it. But look at the age profile compared to Adam Idah. And as I say, we paid 8.5, and I think most of us would agree that 8.5 is a bit steep. We didn't do the business properly in the January, and it came home to roost, and we probably paid 2 or 3 million quid extra. But as I say, the impact he made, JP, even Jim Orr, who's very careful when it comes to figures and throwing money about when it comes to football, he got to the point where he said, aye, we would. And there was that famous clip, you and me, and I'm saying to you, would we pay 9? And you're going, aye, pay the 9, pay the 9. And I was the exact same. So 12 months down the line, European progression, another double, 20 goals in the bag, international players scoring in the Champions League. Why would you sell him for 4 million? That does not make sense to me. We wouldn't do it.
No, it's not.
No chance.
And I'm pretty sure if you said to anybody at Celtic that is dealing with this, is this something you're considering? They'd be like, absolutely no way. We're not. That's just ridiculous to even contemplate selling a player for under the value that you've paid for them a year on when they've done so much for you in that time. So there's an percentage of the support that doubt him. That's not a reason to go and sell him for 3-4 million. Well, because there's I don't know, 10%, 20% of the Celtic support aren't convinced about Adam Idah. Right, cool, we'll sell him for 3.5 million and just get whatever we can for him. Because
he's not in Albion Yeti territory, is he?
100%, no way.
You know what I mean? And this is the thing, JP. Also, the market we're buying from for the two players we've been talking about, Engels, we're buying them from the Bundesliga. And then you're looking at the English top 2 leagues in England. I mean, £10 million getting passed about, it's not a massive fee in modern football. We've got to normalise it. I keep saying this, JP. So if you buy 3 players this summer for £10 million each, right, one of them might not work out. or one of them might take a season to settle. But we can't always go for this instant gratification. If you lose those two moving parts from this squad that won you the double and made progress in Champions League, you're going to have to replace them like for like. So you're paying another £10 million for each of them replacements, at least. And there's no guarantee that they're going to work. So I think we've got something to work. I do see Idah as a work in progress. I also see Engels as a work in progress as well.
Totally. And I want to see them progress at Celtic. I want to see both of those players develop and maybe use some of this negativity that's been labelled at them to ram it back down people's throats.
Do you do one of them?
No.
Do you do one of them?
I think the satisfaction should be in pointing to what you've won at the end of the season and what you've contributed to that. Because Arne Engels contributed to the league and cup double that we won this season. He wasn't a bit part player. He wasn't out injured for 3-4 months. He played the majority of games, and whilst he might not have been 10 out of 10 in all those games, scoring worldies and you know, flicks and tricks and all that, he still contributed. He's still a key reason why we won the league and a key reason why we won the cup. It's simple to me, but people want to complicate it and think that there's better out there. And there may well be better out there, but currently we've got those players. We've shelled out a lot of money for them, and I think it's surely our responsibility to at least allow these players to breathe and develop and invest our time in them, as Brendan Rodgers is investing his time with them, as a club has invested money in them, rather than just be like, nah, scrap heap, get rid of them, get them gone. Like, it's not Matt O'Reilly, get him gone. Like, Matt O'Reilly was a once in a lifetime player. You know, we'll probably not see us signing someone like that for that lower a figure and then selling him on for that higher figure. And also, by the way, Matt O'Reilly doesn't end at Brighton.
No.
There is a bigger club in the offing for Matt O'Reilly. That is a certainty. So, and then it's a case of, well, there you go. There's your real proof as to why he was a once in a lifetime player, because he could probably go over to Italy and mix it. He's a top player who will get his club that he lands in and then fits well and then plays 30, 40, 50 games a season and gets the plaudits at that club that he deserves. It's just been unfortunate what's happened at Brighton. He may well still stay at Brighton. Wouldn't it be the worst thing if he did? But if he does move, he's not going backwards.
No, he's not. And by the way, I remember a fairly early episode of A Celtic State of Mind, sitting talking to Kevin Graham about Chris Idah and saying that Chris Idah would be a £10 million sale. And at the time, being absolutely scoffed at. Chris Idah will be a £10 million sale for Celtic, and it happened. And I think we ended up getting 14 million quid from him. And by the way,
I said 15, 20, and I got laughed at, completely laughed at in the comments. And then he went for what, 12, 13?
Yeah, and that was after COVID, and the COVID situation affected the fees that we got for Edouard and Idah. You look at the players and Christie, the teams who were interested in those three players, right? So if you track back, the interest in Edouard was Arsenal, right? The interest in Ryan Christie was Sampdoria, and the interest in Idah, AC Milan. Paolo Maldini spoke about Idah. You fast forward 12, 18 months down the line, after COVID, everybody's hedging their bets. We lost massive amounts on those three players, huge amounts. But Chris Idah at that time scoffed it for saying he was a £10 million player. At this moment in time, Arne Engels, if he was to have a season next year, JP, if you're sitting here in 12 months and he has gained more international caps, he's had another successful Champions League campaign under his belt, he wins a double domestically for Celtic, and he finds a wee bit more of a consistency for Celtic, how much is he going to be worth then? Because then, at that point, right, it's no flash in the pan. He's developing. He's 22 at that point. You seriously tell me that we're going to lose money on an Engels? No chance. Absolutely no chance. You're then looking at the realms of, and it might seem ridiculous now, as it did when I said Idah was worth £10 million, you're then looking at the realms of £20 million. So if Atalanta or a Champions League opponent next season wants to buy him in 12 months, you're doubling your money on the player.
Because that's what you're doing, is putting value on the competition a 50-50 split of competition and his performance.
Yep.
So like what he wins as prizes and also his performance. So when you marry those two things together, I don't know how you're not getting a high fee. And by the way, all those figures that we got for Idah, Christie and Edward were what ultimately led to the rebuild that we needed under Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
whilst we might not have got enough, as much as we would have wanted to get for them, we got enough to allow us to go and spend $4.5 million on Kyogo, $4 million on Starfelt, eventually $6 million in Jota and Carter Vickers.
The business that Ange Postecoglou did was sensational.
I know. By the way, did you read? It's either Mickey Van de Veen or Kevin Van de Veen. I can't remember his name, but the defender at Spurs was speaking in the Netherlands to the Dutch press about Postecoglou leaving,
right?
And he basically was kind of saying he'd built a lot of like good relationships with the players, and he's won a trophy, and it's galvanised us, and he goes, yeah, I think he was being pushed to give an answer. Is it a shock that he's been sacked? And he said yes. So, I mean, I'd like. We always talk about parallel universes, but I would have loved to have seen Ange Postecoglou in season 3 in the Champions League off the back of that, with the appetite and the success. Like what success brings to you as a club when you've been starved of it for so long. It means you want more, and those players. Obviously, not all of them are going to be there next season, but the players that are there from this season and any new players that come in and be like, well, there's your benchmark. We won a Europa League trophy last season, so we can't finish this season without a trophy. We've put our flag in the ground. We have to win a trophy this season. We won one last season. That's what this club does now, and they've just binned them. It just seems.
How can you build that culture if you've been the gaffer that won you the trophy? Seriously, and it's absolutely madness. It's a basket case of a situation. I'd love to meet Spurs in the Champions League next season. I'd love it. I think that would be brilliant, JP. At home.
Never played them. Have you ever played them in European competition?
There was a friendly after 67 because what they exchanged before the game wasn't pennants, it was rugs. So the Celtic rug held by Billy McNeil and then a Spurs rug. And that's what they exchanged. And they were heavy, big, thick rugs that you would, welcome mat style. But yeah, we have played. And I remember the game in the early 90s where we played them. And Gary Lineker played that day. It was 1 each. John Collins scored at Celtic Park, Liam Brady's first season. And then we did play them when Joe Hart played with Spurs. There's a game that we played Spurs in a friendly. Can't remember the score actually. But
was that Celtic Park?
Might be in 1 each as well. I don't think so. No, I think it was away. Joe Hart was in goals for Spurs. I remember that. So, yeah, we played it a few times. Never competitively, but hopefully that will happen next season. Listen, it's always an absolute pleasure, JP. Feel free to disagree with every single thing we've said in the comments. That's what it's all about. Please share your views, why you're disagreeing and what you would do differently in the comments section.
Never even spoke about Brian Wilson, one of the greatest of all time.
Right, here we go.
And your man last week, well,
there you go. Jungle Lion is normally the first commenter of the show. I've left this comment for the final one, JP. You've reminded me. Absolutely. Yep.
You're right. I bought that. That was the first vinyl album I ever bought with a W.H. Smith voucher that I got from my aunt, because it was W.H. Smith in England, John Menzies in Scotland, and you couldn't spend the W.H. Smith voucher in Scotland. So we were in, I've got a feeling I was in York, and because of the film Look Who's Talking, John Travolta, Kirstie Alley, Bruce Willis is the voice of Mikey. The opening intro of that is I Get Around by the Beach Boys. And I saw that when I was like 9, became obsessed with that song. And then we were in, like I said, W.H. Smith, and I saw that. I think it might have even just come out, and I was like, I'm going to get that. And I went home and obviously rinsed I Get Around, but like listened to the rest of it as well. And then was lucky enough to see Brian Wilson a couple of times, the best of which was at the Playhouse 2002, on this day, weirdly enough, 12th of June 2002 at the Playhouse. And he did Pet Sounds with the band The Wondermints that he'd got to be his backing band. I think they actually asked him and said, look, now that you're in a better place, do you want to come do live shows and we'll be your backing band? and it was incredible, absolutely incredible. Me and my mate James Lamb in tears, watching him sing Pet Sounds. So it was a very sad thing to find out yesterday. But what a legacy he's left behind, and to get to 82, given his experiments and hallucinogens and other sorts of things, he did well to get to that age. And I can't say I've got 5 Beach Boys albums up there on CD. Just amazing person and such a talent. God only knows Paul McCartney's one of his favourite songs. So you don't get onto that playlist unless you're half decent.
No, you're spot on. And it's interesting when you get introduced to music and how you get introduced to music. There's a couple of things very quickly, JP, I'm going to share with you. You were talking about your first vinyl LP. I have often said the first vinyl LP that I ever owned was Adam and the Ants, Kings of the Wild Frontier. Someone, during one of our events, brought up a mug and handed it to my wife, and it was an Adam and the Ants, Kings of the Wild Frontier mug, which
you told me about that.
Unbelievable act of generosity. Seriously, thank you so much. But what I was going to say, interestingly enough, yours was Look Who's Talking. The film that introduced me to the Beach Boys was Teen Wolf. Remember the scene when he's on top of the can?
Yeah,
that was it. And you're hearing this music, and you've got no idea who the tune, but someone in there's going, I like that tune. That's brilliant. And that was my introduction.
Teen Wolf, an absolute classic. One of my all-time favourite 80s films. So good. Even Teen Wolf 2 with Jason Bateman. It's not as good because it's not got Michael J. Fox, but Teen Wolf's class.
Go and watch it. Absolutely. I introduce all this stuff to the wee guy now. Thanks everybody for getting involved. We have been talking about Real Sociedad, and if you fancy getting one of these, they're going quick, but you can get them on the link underneath this video. There is also a link for Brian McClare and Peter Grant at Gracie's. Going fast, 40 tickets left. It's going to sell out. If you want to come along for an evening of hijinks, then be quick, because I've shared a few of the clips of Brian McClare online, JP, and people are saying, I'm not quite sure about his humour. Well, that's chalky. That's what he does. His humour can often go way over your head. It's brilliant.
My mate Paul Urey lives out, I don't actually know exactly where he stays. I'm going to say Southeast Asia, because it's a broad spectrum of places. But he met Brian McClare the other day, sent me a picture, and he texted me a picture of him and Brian McClare. He was met one of your, a friend of Acsom out here. He was over for some sort of youth tournament or whatever. And he just bumped into him, sent us a picture. So thanks for sending that, Paul. He watches every Thursday. So
fantastic. Thanks for that, Paul. No, he is a unique character. I love his chat. It's going to be great with him and Granty as well on the stage. Very interesting time for Celtic. Come along and join us at Gracie's in Glasgow. Cracking venue at the end of the month. Thanks everybody for getting involved. I've really loved that. Thanks again, JP, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.